Hey guys, it's Dora. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be going over the brand new Netflix show, Fate the Winx Saga, what I thought about it, my review, but also pointing out the differences from the original show, the cartoon, The Winx Club. If you're my age range, you were probably just as excited for the show as I was. I watched the Winx Club cartoon every Saturday when I was younger. I feel like I have some knowledge about the Winx Club. I am not an expert or anything, but there are some obvious differences, I think, in this new show. So I want to kind of go over them a little bit and see if the Winx Saga did the cartoon justice. Before I get into anything, I just want it to be known I loved this show. I did not expect anything from this show. I thought it was probably going to be way different from the cartoon. It would steer just like in a completely different direction. I don't expect a lot from these adaptations, to be honest, but I was addicted to this show. I finished it in like 3 days. There's only 6 episodes. For the next season, I need the creators to do at least 10 episodes. A lot happens, so it's very entertaining, a lot of drama. A lot of the same things happen in the cartoon. The story is kind of similar. The setting is kind of similar. The characters are actually way more similar to the cartoon characters than I thought they would be. So to back up a little here, I thought this show wasn't going to be really anything because of these promo photos. I was just like, what are they doing here? What is... I just did not know what to expect with this show at all because of these photos. Usually Netflix promo photos are pretty good. They have really good trailers. Yeah, very disappointed in these promo photos, but now that I have seen the show, I think these promo photos are perfect. So instead of this being the branding of the show, you know, the overall feel and the setting, the theme, it is instead this. So originally the Winx Club cartoon is very girly, it's very glittery. You know, they're at this boarding school, but it's just very magical, whimsical. But this show really captured the magical boarding school really well, kind of like Harry Potter. I don't want to compare it to Harry Potter because most people hate when anything is compared to Harry Potter because it'll always be, you know, top tier or whatever, but it really did that well. The boarding school has this old, prestigious, magical boarding school kind of feel to it, and you keep up with all these different characters, these magical characters, just like, you know, Harry Potter or that old Nickelodeon show, if you guys know what I'm talking about. I can never remember the name. And they also kept the theme of this magical school being in this world there's a lot of nature. There is a surrounding forest, but there's a lot of bad kind of magical creatures in the forest. So there's a force field around the school. So these promo photos are actually very realistic, I guess. Obviously, the show isn't very realistic, but they did a really good job of taking the branding from glittery fantasy, in-your-face, colorful cartoon to a very realistic, old prestigious boarding school in the middle of this magical forest. A big part to this as well is the powers of the fairies have changed a little bit. So instead of all these random powers like technology, music, they are really focusing in on the fairies having elemental magic. So most of them already had the elements fire, water, and earth. So they're really playing off of that. They made Musa a mental. So basically you have the 4 elements, you have a mental element, and then you also have the sun element. I'm also going to mention before I get into the characters, something I really like that they have done. They keep the characters within their elements color theme, and I just absolutely love that. Every now and then you'll see them in a different color, so it makes it a little bit more realistic, but I just love, especially if they're in a group, since they don't actually have, you know, their sparkly uniforms and they're not doing some big like change like they do in the show into their uniforms when they're like fighting evil or whatever. They instead just are wearing their elemental color. So Bloom is always wearing red since she represents fire. Aisha is always wearing blue because she represents water. Tara wears green because she represents earth. Stella wears yellow to represent the sun. And then Musa doesn't really have a color specifically since she is a mental. So they've kept it true to her original character from the cartoon show, who wears this kind of burgundy color. So it's like a mixture between pink and purple. And I've noticed they've done that, really keep it in like a dark pink, purpley mauve tone. And I really like that. You know, they didn't have a color to pull with her, so they just took it from the cartoon show what she wears. So I appreciate that. And then also Beatrix just wears dark colors because she is electricity. She comes from one of the elements, and I can't remember exactly how they explain it or if they really dug, deep into it, but it's something of like earth or fire or sun. So if there are any powers that aren't of the 4 elements, they stem kind of from them. So Stella being a sun fairy kind of goes with like earth, but also fire. It's kind of like in between those two. So I really like that. And I hope there's more of an explanation to these powers within the next season or 2. I'll go over the individual characters in a minute, but I first want to talk about the overall story and plot of the show and how that is different from the Winx Club. So essentially the story is the same. They have just kind of intensified things, made it more dramatic, which makes sense going from a cartoon to a live action series. So the main story arc is over our main character Bloom, trying to find out who she is, what her identity is. She knows that her parents aren't her real parents, she's magical, they aren't. She's trying to find her real parents, where she came from, what her magic is all about. She's just completely in the dark. And so that is the main storyline of this show, which I'm really happy they kept. Just the details are a bit different, and that's obviously due to the extra characters we have. They've also introduced the burned ones, which is the main kind of evil they are fighting. We don't know much about them in the beginning. We just know that they are very large human-like monsters. That's essentially what the specialists are training for, is to fight the burned ones, which doesn't really make any sense because the specialists don't have powers. They're just ninjas basically, or like sword fighters, G.I. Joes, I don't know. And then we also have some of the same subplots. So we still have Stella's storyline, where she is the princess of Solaria, which is a different world. So all of these fairies come from different realms. I think there's like 7 they say in the show. I don't know if that was ever clarified in the cartoon. Essentially with the Winx Club, you want to graduate from Althea so that you can protect your world. And so fairies come from certain worlds and they want to become guardian fairies essentially of their own world. Another subplot that is still the same is Beatrix's whole thing. So again, I'll get into who her character is, but she's not from Althea. She's trying to get into Althea, discover things and to take it over, that sort of thing. That is a same subplot, but as we know, the cartoon has, a lot of seasons, a lot of episodes, especially for a cartoon, I feel like. So a lot of different things go on, but I'm happy overall that we have the same storyline and then we have the same kind of sub storylines. It's gonna be really interesting to see if they keep the same storylines that are throughout the rest of the cartoon show. Before I get into who the characters are, which characters from the cartoon they represent or have been adapted from, also kind of their differences, let me know down below what you felt about the show if you've already watched it. If you haven't already watched it, I'm going to keep this spoiler free as much as I can, but you should just watch it because it's really good. So our first character, of course, is the main character, Bloom. This is her original character from the cartoon, and then this is her character now in the live action show. So again, Bloom wears red to represent the fire element. She still has her red hair. I will mention the beauty or glam squad for this show needs to do a little bit better of a job with her hair color. I'm assuming she's not a natural redhead. When she's in scenes and you're close to her hair, you can see that it's patchy. So I don't know if that was on purpose. Maybe they're trying to make it look natural or something like that. Besides that, I really like how the characters, whenever they are using their powers, their eye color goes to their elemental color. Bloom is pretty much exactly the same, and I really, really like that. She's very dramatic, has that kind of teen angst, but also is very proud and determined just to figure out what her identity is. And so she's just very true to the original character. The actress isn't that great of an actress, but I feel like she's okay. I'm not really here to comment on the acting. The acting is honestly way better than I anticipated. Like I said, I just had really low expectations for this show. Next is Stella, and these are her 2 characters. I have to say, I do really like this actress. She looks like someone I know in real life, like a twin, but she's in another show that's like a British show, I think, where she's pretty good. I can't even think of the name. This is kind of the same scenario as Bloom. Stella's character is basically the same character. Obviously, she's not wearing orange anymore, she's wearing yellow, but I feel like that's more fitting for her character since she is a sun fairy or the sun fairy. Yellow makes more sense as opposed to orange. Orange should be more of Bloom's thing, and obviously Bloom isn't wearing blue anymore. I guess I should mention that as well. But yeah, Stella is still the princess of Solaria, and she starts off in a relationship with Sky. I believe this is true. I can't remember what happens with Sky. I just know that obviously Bloom and Sky end up together, but I couldn't remember if Sky originally started with Stella. But I do like that dynamic dynamic. Bloom and Sky like each other, but they don't really know what to do because he already has this thing going with Stella, but it's kind of like on that taboo line because Bloom really shouldn't be doing that to her friend. Anyways, I won't get into that. I just really like how they have developed Stella's mother's character. So she's kind of like a bad guy. She's very controlling, and Stella has to be this like amazing, powerful person, but her mom is actually like kind of evil. So I like that whole arc for her. I think they're doing that really well. The third Winx Club member is Flora. This is my personal favorite. Yeah, so this is probably the biggest change I think when it comes to the original members. So instead of her name being Flora, her name is Tara. I always thought Flora was Hispanic as well. It's not really, you know, determined, but she is, you know, very tan, light brown hair. I think she has hazel eyes. So obviously she is white now, and she's shorter and she is larger. So we have some big girl rep now instead of all of the fairies kind of being the same size, which I really appreciate. The only thing I don't appreciate is that her name isn't Flora. I just really want her name to be Flora. We learn almost right away that she has a cousin or aunt. Thought she said her aunt was named Flora, but I had a friend tell me that she says it's her cousin is named Flora. If that's the case, we might actually see Flora's character in the future, and that would be amazing. If she is her cousin, then she just comes to Althea. But at the same time, why do we need Tara then if Flora is going to be a character anyways? I think Flora's main color in the cartoon is pink, and so now her color is green, obviously, because she is an earth fairy. They also decided to make Tara kind of from Althea. This is her own world, and her dad is a professor there, and her brother is going to Althea at the same time as well. So that was interesting. I kind of like how they made it more of a familial kind of legacy thing like you typically would see in schools, especially prestigious schools like this. I also really liked how they created a relationship between Tara's brother and Musa. I do like everything they've done with Tara. I just wish her name was Flora. Come on. The fourth fairy is Tecna, and no, I'm not showing her live action version because she doesn't have a live action version. This was surprising just because she is in the original 5. I thought the show was gonna at least have the original 5 and then maybe Aisha. I was pretty certain Roxy wasn't gonna be in it. Most people forget about Roxy actually, but there's actually not that much to say about this character then. Basically, Tecna is a technology fairy. I think why they left her out was because they couldn't make it fit within the elemental magic. We might see her in the future. I have a feeling we probably will since she is within the original 5 members. But yeah, I always liked her character. I think she's a good character, so yeah, fingers crossed we'll see her in the future. The fifth and final member of the original 5 is Musa. Like I said, I really liked what they did with her character. They kept it within the same color scheme. They actually make her hair very similar. I do not know if this actress is Hispanic, but if she is, they have switched her from, I always thought she was Asian, but she could have been white. It's kind of hard to tell. They don't, you know, really tell you what their ethnicities are, but I always felt like Flora was Hispanic and Musa was Asian, and then Aisha is black, which she is still the same ethnicity, but I think everyone else is white, I'm pretty sure. It's kind of hard to tell, but yeah, so now there will be some Hispanic representation if she is. Like I said, I really like how they've made her a mental. So originally her character was a music fairy, but since they wanted to fit it within the elemental magic, they made her a mental, which is really interesting. So she can feel everyone else's feelings and emotions. Essentially, she can't read their minds, but she can just feel everyone all the time. So she wears her headphones and plays music so that she doesn't have to feel everything. You learn later in the show that she kind of has a problem with it. So I really like her whole character arc and her storyline going on, but she also has a thing going on with Tara's brother. So I cannot think of his name to save my life. I know 2 of the boys' names has stayed the same. I see that there's a Dane in the show and there's also a Sam. I think his name is Sam, right? I watched this show in like 3 days, so I can't remember, but we all know that Musa ends up with Riven, and Riven is a different character now instead. They gave his name to someone else. He's actually kind of a bad guy. He is Beatrix's kind of fling. I have a feeling she's just stringing him along, but yeah, I don't know why they wouldn't have just made Riven Tara's brother, but also they need Riven to be a specialist as opposed to an earth fairy. But why, I mean, couldn't they still be related though? He just didn't have powers. I don't know. I'm really big on, I feel like the girl characters should end up with the boy characters that they're supposed to. I don't know why, it's just like in my head I know which boy characters each girl ends up with, and so I just want it to end up like that. But in all honesty, it's really not that big of a deal. The next member is Aisha. So I was really confused about her character, and I figured out why. So the version of the Winx Club that I watched, her name was Layla. I was really happy once I found this on the internet because I was so confused. I was like, there is not a member called Aisha. I was like, I know there's not, but I kept reading about her character and that her name was Aisha, and then I finally found out that some versions call this character Layla. I'm not sure why there's two different names, but honestly I feel like if her name was Layla, it wouldn't feel right as like a water fairy. Anyway, she looks a bit different in the sense that she doesn't have that burgundy hair color with like pink highlights, and instead she just has black hair, but she also has sometimes blue in it, which I really like, so they kind of kept the color in her hair the same, I guess. But yeah, she's a water fairy, so she obviously wears blue now, and I really like it. They kept it in the theme that she is a swimmer. She's supposed to be like this really good athlete. I can't remember in the cartoon if she was a kind of teacher's pet, goody two-shoes, as much as she is in the live action, so I can't really comment on that. But I will say Tara and Flora's original character are very similar in the sense that they're very positive and kind of light. Tara's just a bit more dramatic than Flora is, in my opinion. Musa is a little meaner, but Bloom and Stella are the same. Stella is super kind of high maintenance. She really likes fashion. She's supposed to be very ditzy though. Stella is supposed to be very ditzy, and I feel like she's not really ditzy in the show. She seems like a very like strong, feminine kind of symbol, and she's supposed to be really smart. She always knows kind of what to do, so they've definitely done a 180 with that. But yeah, that's the characters. Oh, I almost forgot Roxy. I said in the beginning of the video, most people forget Roxy. She is the 7th member, so we don't see her until like season 4 or something like that of the cartoon, so quite a bit happens before she's ever introduced. She is a fairy of animals, which is pretty self-explanatory. I feel like this could be adapted into the show since animals kind of deals with like earth and nature. But yeah, to be honest, I don't really remember her character that much, so I don't really care if we see her or not, but I really do want to see Tecna. As for Beatrix, she represents the character Stormy in the cartoon, and I really like this. I thought we were going to see the original 3 bad guys, which are the girls Stormy, Icy, and Darcy. Maybe we do in the future. I have a feeling that Beatrix is gonna have a girl squad. I just really want to see Icy. I really loved her as a child. Stormy was my favorite, but Icy was my second favorite. I think I just like Stormy because her name was similar to mine. But yeah, she has the electricity power. Obviously she looks a little different. She doesn't have like the frizzy storm cloud hair, but she essentially has the same storyline, the same motives. So as soon as you know her power in the beginning, you know that she represents Stormy and that she's a bad character. But they've teamed her up with Ribbon and also Dane, I think I think he's Dane. Yeah, I don't know exactly what they're doing with that. You know, we have a lot of other like bad characters introduced, of course. But yeah, for Farragonda, she isn't super old anymore. She's a bit younger, but she acts kind of the same, so you don't really need to talk about that too much. Sky is essentially the same. I'm pretty sure Sky's supposed to be a prince, and also we find out that Aisha is a princess at some point. Obviously Bloom is a princess at some point, so I don't know if that's gonna come into play. Riven, of course, I've already talked about. Instead of him being Musa's thing, he is now Beatrix's thing. There's not really much to his character other than the fact that he's very like manipulative. And yeah, those are all the characters of the Winx Saga / Winx Club. Like I said, I really enjoyed this show. I'm super excited for what they're going to do in the future. Just please, I know none of the creators are gonna watch this, but like, can we please get more episodes than 6? I would also like to see more of like classroom action. We only saw maybe like 2 or 3 scenes of that. They obviously wanted to hurry up and get into the drama and the storyline of what was going on, you know, surrounding the school, and they had to do that because they only had 6 episodes. So please make like 10 episodes this next season. That's all I want. And yeah, 5 out of 5 stars. I feel like they did it pretty perfectly. There's not very many negatives I have to say about the show. There's not a lot that I didn't like. Very surprised that I'm saying that after seeing these promo photos beforehand. I even tweeted, please do not destroy my childhood. And they didn't, so I'm happy. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe, of course, if you feel like it, if you haven't already. And I will see you in my next one.